Well, that would be.
Right, so how did you find that?
Hard.
Very hard, requires strength, balance, flexibility, everything. Everything it requires.
Keeping low.
Keeping low has to do with flexibility, strength. It's like doing a plank, but walking. A moving plank. It's like the reptilian mode. But you can see how we could transition from reptilian, really slow, into primate, aggression, and then back into civilized and just breathe and calm. And then changes to illustrate the difficulty of it to start with, and it brings up the next topic, which is a misunderstood subject, because people think, right, okay, muscle mass, it's muscles, that's all it is, right? But one important, really important thing that illustrates it is if we look at a graph, and just excuse me while I draw some figures on here. Right, so let's say this is a muscle mass or strength graph. So on the one side you have 60% muscle mass relative to your body weight. So everybody is different. This is why this is such a good illustration, because it works for every individual person. You can't say I'm lifting 80 kilos, that's irrelevant. You're lifting your body weight. So it's your muscle mass relative to your total body weight. So it goes from, say, and it can be lower, it can't be higher than 90. So starting at 60% muscle mass, if I just, and everything I do is never to scale, you know that right now. So, but I'm just going to draw a line, a diagonal line straight across. Okay? Now, the research shows that having a low muscle mass, say in this bottom quartile, compared to the top quartile, or centile, wherever it is, the difference between the bottom and the top quartiles has a hazard ratio of 3.2. What that means is that if you are in the bottom quartile, 60% or under, you have a 200% greater chance of dying from any cause, known as all-cause mortality. So, low muscle mass equals 200% greater all-cause mortality. So all-cause mortality could mean you die from a fall, you break a hip, and you die as a result of that. You die of cancer, you die of heart disease. All causes. If your muscle mass is low, you have a 200% greater chance of dying from everything as opposed to the person who is in the top quartile of muscle mass. Now that is shocking, isn't it? Because you think muscles are just muscles. So what? This is peer-reviewed research. The hazard ratios are well established in science, and if you have low strength, low muscle mass, you have 200% greater chance of dying from all-cause mortality. So let's look at why. And there are three things that I've looked at. The first thing is bone density and falling. And this brings in two subjects, sarcopenia and osteoporosis. Sarcopenia is muscle wastage. From the age of 30, you may, not everyone, depends how if you maintain maintain it, but you may lose up to 10% of your muscle mass every decade from age 30. So by age 80, you could lose 50% of your muscle mass if you don't do anything about it. And that's how the 80-year-old gets into this bottom quartile, because he's lost 50% of his muscle mass, and he falls and he breaks a hip and he never comes out of hospital because of complications, pneumonia, whatever it is. So that's how a low muscle mass can affect your aging, but also your bone density. Your muscles are attached to your bones with tendons. So every time you flex a muscle, the tendon pulls on the bone. So the bone is being pulled in all directions. And that pulling creates the osteoblasts and casts and all the rest of it that the skeleton needs to grow. Your skeleton changes about every 7 weeks. And it's because of the action of your muscles pulling on the skeleton. So, once again, if you are in this bottom quartile of low muscle mass, you're going to have low bone density as well. Osteoporosis. You're going to have brittle bones, and the likelihood of you falling, breaking a hip, breaking a shoulder are very high, and the complications that come after that. Going into hospital is a complication. So you don't want that. So I want to be here. I don't want to be down there. Right. So the first thing is bone density, falling, sarcopenia, losing up to 10% muscle mass per decade unless you do something about it, and the resulting osteopenia and osteoporosis. Any questions on that? People tend not to realise your muscles affect your bones. You think, strong bones, I eat calcium, keep my bones strong, and it's like a separate thing, but it's not separate. It's dependent upon your muscle mass. Okay?
Just one comment, sir. Not all exercises are created equally when it comes to bone density. And actually, if you do non-body weight exercises or non-gravity weighted exercises, you won't increase your bone density.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good point. Cycling is totally useless.
Swimming doesn't work.
Swimming is totally for bone density.
Jumping up and down though, really good.
Yeah. What we've just done, body weight, jumping, hopping forward, tansu, all of that will increase or maintain your bone density. Swimming, you're not on the floor, so it does nothing. Cycling, you're not on the floor, it does nothing.
Is that to do with impact?
Impact. Your bones feel this. Yeah. That's so bone density is just one aspect of maintaining high muscle mass. 2 is your metabolism. Now we all know about diabetes, pre-diabetes, where your insulin basically gives up because you're feeding constantly, it's coming out, and it gets fed up in the end, and it said, I'm going to become resistant to all of this carry on, and then you become pre-diabetic and diabetic. If you have a high muscle mass, you are extremely sensitive to insulin. The moment food goes down, turns into gluten, your insulin is there and it grabs it and it takes it to your muscles. If you have a low muscle mass, part of it is going to stay in your blood because you don't have the muscle mass. So basically your muscles are a sponge and they soak up all of the glucose that you take in and use it. If you don't use it, it'll stay in your blood, which is essentially diabetes, because then the insulin decides to become resistant to coming out all the time because you're feeding it so many calories all times of day and night, and and it said, I've had enough, and that is type 2 diabetes. Scientists have now classified type 3 diabetes, which is diabetes of the brain. And that again is insulin resistance. It has to do with how you clear sugar out of your blood. And in terms of the brain, that means cognitive decline. So that is diabetes type 3 now. You know, 1, quite often from birth or very, very young. 2, because you eat too much, drink too much, don't exercise, a lifestyle thing. And 3, your brain can get diabetes as well, insulin resistance. But high muscle mass, that will never happen because your muscles are soaking up all of the glucose, right? So once again, get in this quartile, not this one. So metabolism, really important. Anything else on that, on metabolism? Anything else I wanted to say? Another one? No.
What about diet?
Yeah, come to it.
Lost.
Yes.
So is that 90% body mass relative? to
It's
your
all
full body?
relative, yes.
Relative to
So
body
it doesn't mean you're a bodybuilder.
No.
I'm about 89%.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would say he's a right skinny kid. You know. But relative to my body weight,
Yeah.
89% of my body is muscle.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm covering this subject is because you could see when you have to support your body weight, how easy is it? If someone makes it look easy, it's because they have a high muscle mass relative, as you say, to their body weight.
And of course, probably 90 is the maximum because you've got the
Yeah.
weight of the skeleton, the weight of
The only way I could get to 90 is to have 5% body fat.
Which is
Because you
dangerous.
need 3 to 5% for your skeleton. Skeleton will weigh maybe 3 to 3.5 kilos. So there'll be 4 or 5% just on your skeleton. And then you need very low body fat to get to 90% muscle mass. So the norm, I mean, researchers always discount outliers. That this person here is so sick, they're an outlier. This person is a freak, he's an outlier. So the population are in this middle bit, and that's all they're concerned with as regards research. So they discount the top and bottom.
Aren't cyclists,
Sorry?
aren't cyclists known to have, like professional cyclists, very low fat and
No, but we're talking about bone density. Because
Oh,
we can't-
bone
yeah,
density, bone density.
Yeah, cardiovascular system would be
Yeah, but
very
you're
high.
both right, bone density, but yeah, really low body fat, because they want high power
yes,
to body weight.
yes. So the muscle mass
It's
very high.
very high because the body fat, there's an inverse correlation between muscle mass and body fat. As your muscle mass goes up, your body fat comes down. Yeah? So there's that inverse correlation. So the main population are in this middle bit. So that is the norm. And if you think about what is normal today, say for like Steve and I, between 65 and 70, is when everything goes wrong, right? If you're not on blood pressure tablets for hypertension, if you're not on statins for high cholesterol, if you don't have atherosclerosis, if you don't have the beginnings of fatty liver disease, then you're not normal. All of those things are normal for a 70-year-old. Okay? So that's why I'm free, because I don't want to be normal. Right? Normal isn't good. If at 70 you have to be on tablets for hypertension, for cholesterol, fatty liver, your arteries are narrowed because you don't exercise enough and because you eat too much.
To even try to put your on even if you don't need it.
Yes, yeah,
I've been there.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
There's your age, right, we need to be on these
Yes,
or these.
yeah.
No.
Did you know that, Rachel? GPs will say you've got to go on statins after blood work that shows, like mine showed, triglycerides of 0.25, right? There's no sugar in my blood, it's all in my muscles. And they said your cholesterol, which was perfect, the HDL ratio, the triglycerides to HDL, because of your age, we want to put you on statins. And I said, are you having a laugh? Well, what is the point of that when I do all this work to stay off drugs? But as a matter of course, you get to 65, 70, and you must go on statins. You must have hypertension drugs.
Yep.
And you have to resist. Say no.
I think it's screening tools, isn't it? The whole point is they work for populations, they don't work for individuals.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
you said,
Exactly.
You're not,
Yeah.
No.
So what Rachel's saying, it's all this middle group. This is the population, and you've got to become a freak to stay out of it. Yeah.
I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there.
Right. So metabolism, muscles, they just soak up the glucose. So it isn't going to cause the problems of pre-diabetes. 3, immunity. Your high muscle mass has a sort of immune regulation. And it does that because it releases anti-inflammatory hormones, interleukin 6 and interleukin 10, which mop up harmful inflammation in the body. So if your lifestyle is sedentary, that inflammation will run rampant. Having a high muscle mass means you're releasing the interleukins, which controls inflammation. It will allow inflammation when you're injured. That is good. But chronic inflammation is bad because all disease stems from inflammation. So having a high muscle mass improves your immunity. There is also a pathway called AMPK, which recognizes when insulin is very low, glucose is very low in your blood, and it then releases anti-inflammatory hormones as well. I think it's adenosine monophosphate protein kinase, AMPK, and it only happens when you train fasted. So if you don't eat in the morning and you train, then you open the AMPK pathway. And it's one of the main, like Professor David Sinclair at Harvard is looking at longevity in terms of sirtuins and AMPK. And he says you must train fasted. So if you think, I'm going to Tangsu, I need some energy, I'm going to have a meal before I go, you've switched off AMPK. Because then your glucose and insulin are going to be high while you're training. It's going to give you energy for training, for sure, but it's not going to switch on the pathway that reduces inflammation in the body. Okay. So you train fasted.
Fasting has become very popular in the past year or so, hasn't it?
Well, it's because it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's people like David Sinclair and many others in the UK, Professor Tim Spector. All of these people are telling the population, but people don't want to listen. It's that thing again, you don't really want to know the truth.
You don't want to do the hard work, do you?
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder where the 3 meals a day came from then. Is it a recent thing? Breakfast, lunch,
Probably.
dinner?
Well, I mean,
Never used to.
breakfast came from somebody, I can't remember his first name, some like William Kellogg, who was a Seventh-day Adventist, and because he was a religious freak, he didn't like men being promiscuous. So he thought, if I feed them corn, it's going to dampen their desires. This is like 1900 or something. And so he developed cornflakes. And he needed a marketing ploy. So his marketing ploy is breakfast, the most, what do people say, the most important meal of the day. So that was his logo. Breakfast or cereal, the most important meal of the day. And of course, people still say it now.
Yeah.
Everyone will tell you breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's the most important meal of the day to miss, but it's not the most important meal of the day.
And it actually says break fast.
Yeah,
You think about it.
but my breakfast is 12,
Yeah.
not 8 in the morning. It's still breakfast. I still eat porridge. But all it means is that you have a window from the time you last ate, 6 p.m. say, to 12 the next day. That's 18 hours. 18 hours, AMPK is open because there's no glucose in your blood, there's no insulin in your blood. It's all in your muscles. And so that is the time for rejuvenation, for recycling old cells, creating new cells, like housekeeping almost, cleaning up. So
your body adapts as well.
it's
Your
easy.
longest pants
Yeah.
go, your body adapts. to it.
It's easy because you're asleep most of the time. So as long as you don't snack after tea, like supper time, and you don't have breakfast, 18 hours is easy. And you find it hard to break once you get used to it.
Mental clarity, definitely ketosis is quite nice as well.
Yeah, mental clarity, important. Think of it this way, right? There's a lion in Africa, right? It's not eaten for 18 hours and it's prowling. How sharp do you think its mind is? Yeah.
Laser focus.
You move, it pounces. Right? Its muscles are primed to kill. There's no digestion going on, there's nothing to interfere with that killer instinct. Yet, look at that same lion in the afternoon when it's eaten its prey, what does it do? Lies flat in the sun, asleep. Right? Because it's into rest and digest. So when you're fasted, you're like an animal. Right? So that's the time to train, when you're fasted. So think of it that way. I think it's quite a good analogy, the old lion. What am I talking about next? 4, brain health. Brain health. What the heck has your muscles got to do with your brain? Well, muscle mass, strength, resistance training increase BDNF. BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this is really important for brain health. In fact, a lack of it has been shown in research to promote Parkinson's, cognitive decline, and Alzheimer's. So you need to elevate your BDNF. Again, it improves the immune system, anti-inflammatory, and that is done through training, high muscle mass. You're going to have high BDNF. I've just started a Parkinson's class. Just if they had, and the research shows that in people with Parkinson's, BDNF is low because they didn't do resistant strength waves of the brain. So even if some vessels die, you can create new pathways called neuroplasticity. BDNF can do that. If you don't have BDNF or very low BDNF, you're not going to create new pathways when old ones die. Another one is vascular endothelial growth factor, again in the brain, promoted by strength, muscle mass, resistance training. And this has to do with the blood vessels, the endothelium. And if this is also at a high level, you get angiogenesis as well. Again, that is how new blood vessels can be created when old ones die. So it's like recycling old cells for new ones, old blood vessels for new ones. As one stops working with a clot or whatever, a new one can be created. Angiogenesis, creating a new blood supply to the brain. The brain can do that, only in the right conditions with BDNF and VEGF. And your muscles create this. Don't have this, and you're looking at cognitive decline, Parkinson's, vascular dementia, all because you may be in this quartile, be in this quartile, and don't even be in the middle. Because what is the people in the middle doing? The general population. 1 in 2 will have cancer in their lifetime. 1 in 2 women have osteoporosis over the age of 50. All of the other things, there is 60% of Americans have pre-diabetes. Can you imagine what is it, 300 million people? 60% have pre-diabetes, are on their way to full-blown diabetes, type 2 or type 3. Atherosclerosis, you're expected to have that at 70. You're expected to have that if you're normal. Hypertension, high cholesterol. I think don't be normal.
I'm a geriatrician, so this is a subject very, very close to my heart, but something that's really, really important for ageing and muscle mass is frailty. So frailty is a syndrome where you have increased vulnerability to stresses. So whereas when you're young and fit and robust, if you have something that happens, you recover quickly, you get back to where you were before. If you have frailty, you have a bigger drop and it takes you longer to get better, and you may never reach back to the level of dependence or fitness that you had before. And that's particularly important as we get older, because we may go from being independent to dependent. And something that it's all tied in with nutrition, with muscle mass and sarcopenia, and activity is absolutely key in all of this. And we should be exercising from young until we die. If you can't run, walk, if you can't walk, you do chair exercises. Whatever you do, you just never stop. And it's something that's going to be an absolutely massive impact. 50% of people over the age of 80 are frail. And that's going to have a massive impact on our entire population. The over 80s is the highest growing age group in our country. So, and we're all going to have to deal with that, because frail people they can't do things on their own, they need extra help. And we'll have seen it in our aging relatives when they go from being able to manage, to slowing down, to needing a little bit of extra help outside the house, to then not being able to do the things that they were able to do before. But it's not inevitable. We can prevent frailty through having decent muscle mass, and it gets harder as you get older, and by older I mean over the age of 40, to put on muscle, because the anabolic threshold gets higher. So you need more exercise, you need more protein, you need more of those hormones around. But like you said, if we get our muscles in the best condition we can now, then we may be able to have good function and good health up until the point. I mean, there is a natural lifespan. We're not going to live until we're 150. But if we can stay well until that thing happens, that means that we die in our 90s or 100s, then that's the ideal. And that will put me out of job, so.
Yeah, no.
No, sir.
Perfect.
No, sir.
Yeah, better than I could put it. It just brings everything together. Die as late as possible, as young as possible. Young in your body, young in your mind, but you're 110. And being mobile, being, you know, not being in a wheelchair and not being decrepit. That's the way. It's the only way. There is no other way. And all the mental decline that goes with not being able to stand or being frail and fall and
Social isolation, loneliness, not being able to get out and about.
I think the good thing is though, you're already preaching to the converted, because we're
I
here.
know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, 66,
Yes.
I'm 66, doing things now that I haven't been able to do 30 years ago. I'm loving life, loving it.
You have to,
Getting better.
and as Rachel said, it becomes more important and harder the older you get. So I teach an over 50 class. I always work them so hard, and they think it's and new people come into the class over 50 class. It's going to be gentle, and I always say, 20-year-olds, they can get away with it. Whether they exercise or not, they're going to be fairly strong, fairly fit. But 50, 60, 70, 80 and so on, you have to work harder.
But it's a learned lifestyle.
It is. All the people in the middle are told that is not the case. They're told you retire at 65 or whatever, and then you put your feet up, and then they die.
I've worked on my life, now I can relax.
Yeah. But you do more then.
Yeah.
Every year you do more.
Yeah.
Well, that's what says that you retire when you die. There's no in between, is there?
That's what they say. You don't die because you don't stop working and then you die. You die because you stop working.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Right, we've got 1 minute left, and number 5 is diet, which I've left it till last, so I don't have to say much. Because you don't want to hear what I have to say. So all I'll say is that we're talking about vagus nerve and parasympathetic and all of these good things that you're trying to do. Why would you blow that with a pro-inflammatory diet? Doesn't make any sense to me. So that's all I'm saying. Any questions on anything we've covered today? We've done 2 hours again. How does that happen? I live my life in a time warp. You just like go.
Wish I was Daniel's age.
Yeah. That would be good. Yeah. Right. So obviously we'll put the video on the page, and you can review things that we've discussed. And obviously, if you want things like this, you can just take a screenshot, and then you've got a note of things that we've talked about. But anything spring to mind right now? Daniel, haven't you got a question? No? Did it all make sense? Any other points?
I think it becomes more important to you personally the older you get as well.
Because you realise your mortality, that's
Of
why.
course.
Exercise is a drug company in millions. It truly is miraculous.
I actually become diet contestant. If I don't go to the gym for whatever reason for one, I'll become irritable. It's a drug.
Yeah.
I have
Well,
to,
you get your dopamine
I
afterwards,
have
that's
to do
why.
it. I get up and I do everything
Yeah.
I have. And it becomes a routine as well. And it becomes very selfish, I think. You can become very selfish. But when you do it, you go on holiday, you have to find a gym, you have to do this. The hotels have got one, whatever.
But then, if you've got a floor,
Yes, you
and
can
you can
do
do
that.
primal moves, you've got a workout.
Yeah.
All you need is a floor.
No.
And the other thing about that is the connection to the ground. That's a wonderful thing, to be able to move on the ground, which we don't normally do, we're just on our feet. And that's quite a really
I
nice
think the
thing to
hard
do.
part for us, I think, as students, is sticking with it, is learning it.
Yes, yeah.
You have to stick. Well, I'm saying you're going to do it. Is sticking with it and learning it, because if it's difficult, a lot of people give up.
But I think the parting thing, I would say is, some people looking at this will say, well, what's that got to do with Tansador? What's it got to do with self-defense? What's it got to do with Hoshin Sol? It's got everything to do with Tansador. Tansador is life. What we are talking about here is life. Isn't this, all these things that we've done in the 3 seminars, going to improve your Tansador? Your breath work? All of the things we've talked about here to improve your day-to-day life?
Because Tansador isn't 5:30 till 7:30.
No. It's not a sport.
6:30 till 8:30.
It's a martial art. It's an art. The art of Hoshin Sol. Hoshin Sol means personal protection skill. When I go to sleep, I'm doing personal protection. The foods I eat, my diet, is personal protection. When I exercise, it's personal protection. And when I train, it's personal protection. To me, there's no difference between any of those things. It's all Tansador. So I do Tansador every day, all day. Right, so think of it that way and it takes on a different slant. Okay.
So,